Wow, I don't know if I'm live or not. Um, Let me, it says it's live, but I'm not getting any kind of indication, so I'm going to go to YouTube and figure it out. Gosh, I apologize. If anybody's seeing me right now, I apologize for the... Oh my goodness, it's been a technical difficult for me. I don't know if I'm live, dead. Here we go. I should be live right now, but it's just not telling me, so... I'm going to go to my... But if I switch my... Patience, sorry. Okay. New tab, new window. I hope I'm live. I really do. Okay. 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 You can see me. Thank you. Are you hearing me and seeing me? Are you hearing me and seeing me now? Can you put something in the comment section if you do? Okay. You can see me. Thank you. Are you hearing me and seeing me? Okay. Well, we don't need that to be heard. So I'm turning that volume down. Okay. Well, looks like somebody's watching. And here we are. So I'm going to just go forward as if I'm doing a live YouTube webcast. Boy, that was much more complicated than anything I've done before, and still I don't have the knack of it, obviously. Whoosh! Talking about stress, that's one of my main focuses, is how to work with stress. So, why do I call this the World's on Fire live stream? And it started out because, honestly, I have a lot of stress related to global climate change. And for other people, it's no big deal. But for me here in California, with all the fires and smoke and so forth, it really hits me. And then other people, they have fiery stress in their lives on working 9-to-5 jobs or more than 9 to 5. And these days, society is very speedy. In the Bay Area where I am, the traffic is horrible, and going out is like a samurai experience of some kind. So I feel a real urgency to share what I've drawn from Buddhist wisdom to apply to the context of our lives today. And your situation may not be exactly the same, but I want to share a little bit about how I got into Buddhism back in the 90s, early 90s. I was more of like a spiritual explorer. I wanted to explore inside, probably similar to people who are into drugs. They psychedelic drugs they might want to take and explore. They call themselves, inner explorers, and see where that trip takes them, right? I've never been drawn to drugs. And so, but I was from a family of spiritual explorers. My brother, my mother, they were both spiritual adventurers in the 70s and 80s. So it was kind of normal for my family to ask the big spiritual questions. We weren't churchgoers. I wasn't raised Christian. I wasn't raised in any specific religion. The idea was that the world was open to you to explore and find where you fit in, what resonates with you. So I tried out all kinds of things. I was most interested in a path where you could put it into practice and have a personal experience with it, taste it. Not just be something that's preached to me, but really something that's kind of organic, experiential. And after having kind of looked around at all the, world's religion, I was also looking for traditions where women were not treated terribly, where they were empowered, where there were spiritual heroines that I could look at as role models and so forth. So I landed in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is a patriarchal tradition, but there is a really marvelous history of women saints, let us say, women practitioners history, and there's a present tense, wonderful female spiritual adepts, in particularly I'd say in the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, which is what I took up. But what I'm getting at here is that that's how I went into things. But I found out by accident, I wanted to be this big spiritual hero, right? And I found out that I was benefiting. My life was so much better with Buddhist practice, with Buddhist outlook. It gave me a life purpose, a kind of rudder to navigate through the stresses and turmoil of human life on this planet. And I feel that it could be a rudder for you, potentially. It could be something that gives you meaning. There's so much sort of nihilistic meaninglessness out there. Materially thinking that material things are going to give you bring you to happiness, thinking that sex is going to bring you to happiness, or a romantic feeling of family. And of course they do give you temporary happiness, but it's temporary. And the main thrust of Buddhism is that there is a level of suffering inherent. We have it pretty good as humans compared to, say, I'm trying to think of some farm animal who, they struggle, they live their life in good circumstances or bad more often, and then they're slaughtered. And like machines, And so, but in humans it's less obvious. It's not when you're young. Once you've been through a little bit of life, suffering is really obvious. Isn't that the truth? And where does our suffering come from? Long ago, that guy called Buddha, who was born in India 2,500 or so years ago, long before Jesus, long before Muhammad, looked at the suffering of being old, which is when, I'm getting there, 60. You never know how long you'll last. The suffering of dying, the suffering of being sick, and then all the sufferings of human life of change and thwarted desire. So in our life as human beings, we think if we get what we want, right? We're always looking for what we want, and we're trying to avoid what we don't want. And all of our mind is training their mind over and over again to seek animalistic desires, then all kinds of desires for, thinking that everything, material things or people are going to make us happy and solve our problems. And then they may, for a moment. I'm imagining I love being on a high mountain and looking out over a view. It's one of my characteristics as a human being. And a lot of people like that, right? I love looking at flowers. But pretty soon you've been looking at that high view for a while and you get cold. And the high, you've already seen the view. It's not interesting anymore. It's boring. So even something beautiful like that is changing all the time. You fall in love, you get in a relationship, and they have very romantic feelings about someone. Of course, you always love them, unless you break up, of course. But relationships change, and you see they're just a person. You're a person, but they're just a person. It's not going to solve your fundamental misery in life. It's not going to be the cause of permanent happiness. So the Buddha found a way to really, really relieve suffering, primarily of people. So there are some kind of techniques that are directed at animals and other life forms, but mostly we have the kind of mind and body that can listen to instruction, teaching, can respect the teacher enough to really take it seriously, and then do what they say and benefit from the teachings of teachers of the Dharma. The Dharma is the teachings, means in the case of Buddhism, the teachings of the Buddha, original Buddha. So something I like about Buddhism is that it's realistic about, life is not always glamorous. And so, for example, with going back to global warming or climate change, you don't see a lot of Buddhists, real actual Buddhists who practiced it, not facing squarely the issue of trying to sweep aside the issues of human impacted climate change on this world. It's the way the atmosphere is going, literally, the atmosphere. It's happening. And the Buddha would not approve of trying to pretend it's not happening, So I like that. I like that acceptance. I'll take a look and see if you're commenting in a little bit, but I was a little jangled by trying to figure out how to make this thing work, and it looks like I got one way I hope I'm making it work. So anyway, one primary technique for the Buddhas that Buddha taught for alleviating suffering for us human beings is meditation. And the first primary thing about meditation is it cuts through that constant yin yang yin yang yin yang in your head about strategizing and planning and hoping for what you desire to happen, and remembering what didn't go your way in the past. So in the future we have all these hopes, in the past we have disappointments. So we have anxiety about the future, that we're not going to get what we want, and we have sadness about the past where we didn't get what we wanted. And if you sit and look at your thoughts for a little bit, if you've never done this, it's really important to do for anybody, Buddhist, not Buddhist, anything, and see what your mind is doing. Really become conscious of your thoughts without judging. We're human animals. We all do it. We all think. It's part of being in this body. So the first basic step of Buddhist practice, is to let our mind rest a little bit. So it creates like windows in between all those thoughts of desire and aversion and stupidity and all the emotions, all these afflictive emotions that plague us. Jealousy, anger, desire, like that. You can really get relief from that. And there's many secular ways of many people are teaching meditation. It was drawn from Buddhism. Those early, in the 80s and so forth, people like John Kabat-Zinn started stripping away the religious aspects of Buddhism and teaching that they redubbed mindfulness meditation. That wasn't the name in the Buddhist languages. But and there's not only one way of meditating, there's 100 ways of meditating. More than 100. As many ways of meditating as there are people, probably. We have a lot of people, though. But when you're starting out, there's 3 main ways to kind of quiet your mind. And this really helped me. I was a depressed girl. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was kind of a jerk, judgmental, strident, political kind of jerk. And I was a jerk to myself, and I was a jerk to others. And I had good qualities. I think I was born with natural compassion, which everybody is, and everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses when they're coming into this life, right? But anyway, and what was my other issue was I had attention deficit disorder, and it was undiagnosed because I was of the generation before they recognized the hyperactive kind, but they didn't recognize the kind that girls typically have, where you're spacing out. So that I can read my old report cards and see that I was like, what is little Yudron thinking of? What is she? Is she thinking about summer vacation? What's going on in her head? These poor teachers struggling. They didn't have a clue about how to deal with somebody like me. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one in that classroom, but I was probably the most obvious. So I'm going to do a lot of kind of produced videos for YouTube on how to work with anxiety and meditation, how to work with depression and meditation. I'm going to bring the camera down a little bit. How to work with if you're not somebody with good concentration, and in a way that current cell phone phenomena and social media addiction and so forth has reduced our attention span to a point where maybe some of you guys who weren't originally ADD are now. They're very addictive. So those are my main issues, but we'll pull out other people's issues as we go along and work on, maybe addictions and so forth, and how that works with meditation. But anyway, what I was saying was there's 3 main ways that you can quiet your mind initially, and that is, the first is actually, we're going to do it for a minute, and this is going against everything about YouTube that makes YouTube popular is the speed, right? Jumping, maintaining your interest, and and I love YouTube. Although I tend to like the old people's YouTube channels, not the gaming and so forth, but whatever rolls your socks. So pick an object in your domain, your sphere here. I have a cell phone cord. And the first system is very simple. It's like, and this is the one, I went to a meditation class, really, Jane, I don't remember the woman's name, at a local bookstore, and maybe 4 sessions, and she taught us this technique. It was so awesome. In the olden days, they teach in the Buddhist texts, they teach, a rock, a stick, something like that. We're going to use a cell phone cord, or whatever you have around. And I'm putting it down in front of me where you can't see it. So Sit up straight. You can use a chair, or you can sit on the floor if it's handy right now or in the future. The floor cross-legged is nice, really stable feeling. And assuming that we're more revved up than quieted down right now, a downward motion of the eyes helps you settle. To most people, if you're not going to go to sleep, it's useful. So you kind of keep your eyes open, but looking down at your object. And then we're going to, I don't know, 3 minutes or something, maybe 5. Let's see. We're going to first, you just kind of meditation on an object. Later, we're going to move on to meditation on the breath, which is quite commonly practiced in our society. And then we're going to move to meditation on a visualized object. And this is a very revered system of meditation in the Tibetan way. We'll be visualizing something in front, and we're going to actually set up the visualization with a song that's up there in your, if you go up and pull down the menu at the below my image, I think, you'll see the lyrics of the song later. So now for this object-focused meditation, we're going to go, I'm broadcasting, roommate, I'm broadcasting. We're going to bring our attention to the object again and again. And looking down at the object, we will just think about that object, not thinking about it, not thinking like, what is that object, what is that chord for, and that kind of thing. Just landing our little attention lightly on that object. Then, you'll notice your mind, I don't know if we did it that quickly or not, but your mind will want to wander off and think about whatever it thinks about. Is somebody looking at me, looking at this object? Do I look weird? Or whatever is something burning in the kitchen? What's that noise that was behind Yudron in the video? And it's fine to have those thoughts. Just gently bring back your attention to your object and place your attention back on the object without scolding yourself. The object itself serves as a visual reminder to come back to it. Your thoughts will go off, and then you'll see the object again, and this is the advantage of a real object. It's the most simple form of meditation. Then you see and go, oh, I was meditating. Some people like to breathe through the nose only. Some people like to have their mouth just a little bit open, and so part of their breath goes through the nose and part through the mouth. Right, so that sort of gives you a taste of meditation, maybe not. Just a little brief snippet. Do you have any questions about that meditation with an object? Let me see if my Heart Sutra. Hi there. I think I'm getting less jangled. Boy, I got jangled there. Setting up YouTube Live. I went through so many different sets of software and so forth. So something unlocks or relaxes in you. Just having those little windows before and between one thought and the next, kind of opening up a little bit. Did you begin to feel that? You'll feel some muscular relaxation as well. This is simple. This is a universal human thing. For me, I'd forgotten how great object meditation was, because we don't do it very often. Once you become a serious Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, you're generally using other objects of meditation or no object. But I've got to remember to carry this around with me. It's got to be this. No, it can be anything. Better if it's not moving, I think. So then, let's try another kind of meditation, which very widely practiced. There's many different styles of this meditation, using the breath as an object. And here, it's the breath, that comes out, your out-breath comes out and it spreads and it fills space, right? So it quickly becomes a non-object. It goes from object to non-object. And that way there's a kind of opening up phenomena, or clear seeing of the nature of phenomena. That's two big words, really. Anyway, we'll just see what the experience is like for you. Then we don't have to use big intellectual words. So I think probably the ones of you who are looking live, but maybe people in the future who look at this video won't know how you work with the breath in meditation. So one way is, again, you can have, generally they have the nose and the mouth a little bit open. And you're breathing, of course, naturally. And as the breath goes out, you're paying attention to the out-breath. There's also some systems where you're paying attention to the in-breath and the out-breath. There's systems where you have your eyes closed, and there's systems where you have the eyes open. For now, assuming again that we're kind of keyed up from our workday, and if we're sleepy, you might want to raise your gaze a little bit. But if you're trying to calm down, having a lowered gaze, and then just, you can kind of, your gaze is settled softly out here, somewhere out and down if you're trying to relax. Maybe the end of your arm or so forth. They'll say your eyes are aiming at the tip of your nose. That doesn't mean literally that your eyes are aiming at the tip of your nose like you're crossing your eyes. That's a misconception. They just mean that it's kind of in that direction. Out there, and then softly resting on space. And then you are focusing your attention on the out-breath. And you can kind of feel it for you, where you have the awareness of your breath going out. It might be in your mouth, might be in your lungs even. It might be this space outside coming out of the nostrils and the mouth. No big deal anyway. There's no wrong way to do this. So let's do a little bit of that meditation where you're bringing your attention. Pema Chodron is a very famous meditation teacher. I love her metaphors. Like when moms have babies, and their babies will sometimes kind of lose track of what they're doing. Apparently, I haven't had kids, and when you're breastfeeding them, and you just have to sort of remind them where the nipple is. So in that kind of, and you're not going, oh baby, you forgot you were eating. Get with it. Get with the program. You aren't scolding the baby for forgetting to what they were doing and stopping eating when they need to eat. You're loving that baby, right? So same with you. No scolding. That's the only scolding I'm going to do. Just say, okay, I was thinking. Bring your attention back to the breath. Let's do that. How's that working for you? Do you feel any different when you do that? Hope you're playing along with me. So I started out with that kind of practice, and it was interesting because I do it for like 5. I was really, actually maybe I was a bit hyperactive. I started in, 30 maybe, and it was really, I was anxious. That was an anxious time in my life. Well, I noticed that the first thing I noticed was that I'd do it for like 5 minutes, which seemed like an eternity, and my thoughts, it seemed like they were layer upon layer upon layer upon thoughts. It was hard to be aware of that. All this stuff going on inside, this self-programming kind of, the messages I was sending myself, the crusades I was on in my brain were almost subconscious, you could say. And they came to the fore then. I could see what I was thinking. And the more you sit, the more you see. So it was hard. 5 minutes was hard, I remember. then I gradually increased my period of time that I was doing it. But it's better to do it for the period of time where you are feeling good about it, and then have an ending, and don't drag it out so it becomes some kind of ordeal. So start really short, and then extend if you wish. But I noticed that even with 5 minutes of meditation in the morning, that suddenly I used to be super exhausted at the end of my workday, falling asleep, horrible, exhausted, and that wasn't there anymore. So just that little window where I had those momentary breaks between thoughts made a huge difference in my quality of life. It didn't solve my anxiety and depression. For me, the whole Buddhist package was really beneficial that way. I had to understand, I had to understand more about the meaning of life, those big questions that the Buddha and his wonderful teachers in the lineage of the Buddha taught. So take a moment, please, and subscribe and like this channel. I really appreciate it. It really does a lot for me, and I hope it'll do a lot to help people who are suffering with their ingrained patterns, mental patterns that are really pointless. It's really unnecessary. So much of our suffering is completely unnecessary. Yeah, there's real physical suffering, for sure. There's oppression, there's all kinds of harsh things that happen, but most of our suffering is mental, isn't it? So I want to help people suffering, so please subscribe and like. And I'm actually, following, we're going to start now to the part where I'm following the example of a great master from the Tibetan tradition. His name was Patrul Rinpoche. And I guess that means Father Tulku. I never even thought of it that way. Maybe it's spelled that way. Oh, see, I'm going into Tibetan language. Getting nerdy. I swore I wasn't going to do that. So, anyway, this wonderful, very erudite monk who was a very good storyteller, and he'd studied in depth with one teacher in particular, and he felt that what he'd learned there from his teacher would really benefit regular, everyday human beings. Like regular, it's an agrarian society up there in Tibet on the roof of the world, and that people, like us, we weren't Dharma professionals, we weren't monks, we weren't nuns. He wrote a book that anybody could understand if they could. It probably was read to them. Dharma books were considered holy objects, like the Dharma books behind me. They were placed high on a shrine, and even if you didn't know how to read, which most people did not, you would, even more so maybe. It was like magic having, this book, these holy writings, and you put it in a high place. You never put it on the floor. These books were almost handmade, or made in little factories with wood press print. So that's the sort of atmosphere in which he was. So monks really learned how to read in the monastery, and they would maybe go out into the community and read this book aloud to people. That might be, or there might be one person in the family who knew how to read, and they'd read it out loud. There wasn't any YouTube, and so it was like the YouTube of that day. Seriously, there aren't that many books. A lot of Tibetan Buddhist books, or Buddhist books in general, religious books in general, they're written for scholars. This was really written to bring it home to all of us and help all of us. He wrote a book, the book called, I haven't said that, The Words of My Perfect Teacher. It's one translation of the title of his book. So I'm going to, over the next period of time, maybe a year, I don't know, I'm going to go through that structure of his book, one paragraph or one page at a time, and plug in what I think is useful in that category, making sure I'm not missing any essential points. So today I looked at page 3 of The Words of My Perfect Teacher's translation in English, and we're not studying the text, but if you're a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, you want to read along, we're going to do like one page or one paragraph at a time. Today we're doing a page 3. And I haven't gotten to our third kind of meditation. I haven't forgotten, it's relevant. There he was doing a prologue to his book where he paid homage to the great masters of his Buddhist tradition. And I think since we're coming from all different Buddhist traditions here, or maybe no Buddhist tradition, we're going to pay homage. We're going to work with our fundamental Buddha as a big red Buddha named Amitabha, or the Buddha of limitless light. We could go back and use as our lineage figure who we're calling upon a literal human being, Buddha Shakyamuni from 2,500 years ago, and that would lead us down a path of study of the Buddha's life and so forth, and that's very beautiful. In our tradition, we really work with Buddhas as enlightened, the nature of enlightenment. Especially this kind of Buddha, very simply, who's symbolically represented by a unadorned figure in meditation posture, sitting cross-legged on the floor. And they have various hand gestures indicating their activity and who they are. With Amitabha, he just has a simple mudra of equanimity, equality mudra, and one hand on top of the other. This one. And then in the hands is a begging bowl or an alms bowl. And the Buddha, monks didn't actually make their own money or raise their own food. They were donated money and food by the community. They go around from house to house, and people would put something, and they wouldn't ask for anything. They just say, "Here's my bowl." So they put something in it, good or they wouldn't, and that would be their food for the day. They weren't vegetarians necessarily. Whatever they were given was what they ate. That's an amazing attitude, isn't it? How fussy we've become. Health conscious also. But they only had natural foods back then, right? So we're getting close to we're going to do a meditation on Amitabha. And I think it's our lineage for this community that we're going to create here for this year or 2 years, whatever it takes. We're going to use the lineage of Amitabha Buddha, and then feeling Amitabha Buddha emanated 2 emanations, one that's invisible to us, an energetic presence, known as Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. And then one that was manifested in Tibet and India and Tibet as a great master, Padmasambhava, the lotus born. And those 2 we'll get to as time goes on. But we can start with this very simple red Buddha. You can Google Amitabha, or I put a link above into a video where with this practice is accompanied. I don't have the chops, obviously, to the skills yet to project this images on the screen as we're doing a live stream. If I was a gaming host, I could do that so easily with software. And I have the software now because I had to get it. But so anyway, so when we're done sometime, or first thing in the morning, for example, you can do the practice. It's a 4.5-minute video, I think, with all the iconography, traditional symbolism. The main point is it's like a blue ball of light, you could say, or a blue, if you have any picture of Buddha in your mind, seated Buddha. I'm saying blue, red, emanating light. Buddha is called a limitless light. And in some traditions, that's all they practice is with Amitabha Buddha. In my specific tradition of Nyingma Buddhism from Tibet, we're very connected to this. This is our ultimate connection. There's this it's called the Lotus family, this red Buddha, Chenrezig, and Padmasambhava. These 3. A triad. So don't worry about all the words I'm saying, Amitabha, and who knows what else, other strange words I've said. We'll get into it over time. Don't think you can't get a grip on it. You can. So, why Amitabha? I have notes for myself. We're going to do a visualization practice now with seeing this red Buddha in front, and this text will describe what he looks like, and he has two humanoid beings standing on either side of him, who are great, they call bodhisattvas, and that's called like awakening beings. So they're not quite Buddha yet, they're not quite fully enlightened, they are very far along, farther than I am, way farther, and they're loaded with compassion. So they stand on either side, you'll hear their names there, and let's go through it. At one point we'll stop where it says Om Amitabha Shri, Shri, Om Amitabha Shri, and Om Ami Deva is Deva, Deva is like a god. Om Amideva Shri, Om Amideva Shri is the name mantra of the Buddha Amitabha. And the color red is connected with the afflicted emotion of desire, and you can think of something, a red object like my sweater, your eye is drawn to it. That's why they used to make fire trucks red. Well, red's the color of fire. It's associated with fire in the Dharma tradition also. But the red, everybody's eye would be drawn to that red fire truck, so you wouldn't miss it, right? And whether you like it or not, you're attracted to it. So this kind of relates, this Buddha, this style or family relates to desire and being purified. When desire is, when our desire is we practice with our desire, can be transformed into very, very, very precise wisdom. And so ability to distinguish one thing from the other very clearly, particularly in relation to spiritual wisdom. So this is the kind of wisdom that's really precise, that comes from desire. If you think of I'm no longer of the age where, I'm wrapped up in sexual desires all the time. But I remember, and I bet even if you're not of that age, where sexuality dominates your mind stream, you remember the precision in which you could do a fantasy when you were a teenager, if you're not a teenager? Remember how, you could see every little detail, you could replay over and over and again the exact same detail, exactly how they look, what they did when, etc., etc. Well, that's kind of the unenlightened aspects. Nothing wrong with sexuality, but it's not going to ever bring you to permanent happiness. It's temporary happiness. So in order for it to become blossomed into permanent happiness, we have to practice and change, and when it changes, you'll develop this really precise quality. Okay, so I had more to say on that, but here we are, 50 minutes in. We can at least do a 5-minute practice on this. I wrote a kind of sing-song melody to this, like a nursery rhyme or something. I woke up this morning and I did it. I sang this as my connection to this lineage, this Buddha. The Buddha here is visualized. Buddha Amitabha is visualized in front. You yourself are kind of a stylized, ornamented version of Avalokiteshvara, the great Bodhisattva of compassion. And then again, there's a sort of a humanoid, non-stylized Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, also known as Chenrazik, all-seeing eyes, who's just all about compassion, developing compassion. And then another Bodhisattva, or spiritual hero, the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra on the other side. But anyway, you or yourself are this, will be described here as a great, compassionate hero. So you can if you click the and unfold above the wonderful description above. You'll see the words here, and you can sing along with me, do the visualization along, and then we're going to stop at the mantra Om Amitabha Shri, which is also could be called Dharani. It's based on sutra, on the Buddha's original teachings. And then we're going to come, and there's another kind of stanza, and then we're going to rest in kind of meditation. And then we're going to rise again and then think, oh, can all living beings benefit from this practice? And that's what seals a real Buddhist practice. We wish that all sentient beings will become enlightened. In fact, even that we by ourselves alone can guide all living beings to complete realization, enlightenment. Okay? So I'm going to burst into song now. You ready? Okay. It says Amitabha, Great Bliss, Pure Land Practice. See that? Homage, the three precious jewels and the three roots. I go to refuge, to these zones of refuge. I spark the bodhicitta, supreme awakening, so that I may place all beings in enlightenment. The nexus of a pure realm of ecstasy is not other than the world we already know. In this instant I'm a white Bodhisattva, with one face, 4 arms, and 2 palms together. In the right hand is a mala, in the left a lotus. I am seated cross-legged on a lotus and a moon. In front on his own lotus and a moon seat is the protector Amitabha, red complected. One face, 2 arms in meditation mudra. He wears dharma robes and holds an alms bowl. He is seated in cross-legged posture. To his right is white Avalokiteshvara. To his left is blue Vajrapani. There's an entourage of infinite enlightened ones, bodhisattvas, hearers, and the worthy ones. Light rays spread from seas at their brows and throats and hearts, invoking real wisdom from Amitabha's pure land. They dissolve into the scene inseparably. Then from the heart of Amitabha, from the letter Hri, lights radiate again, pervading all of space. All beings are cleared of wrongdoing and hindrances, and freed up from a deep recurring suffering. There's a sign. Om Amitabha Shri, Om Amitabha Shri, Om Amitabha Shri. So as you recite the magic of this kind of practice is that sometimes a mala is actually like a rosary. And I don't have one with me right now, but I'll pretend. Where you left your hand, you pull the beads of it through your fingers. Count. So you're using your body to practice by counting, and you're using your speech to recite a mantra very quietly, like at the level it can be heard at your collar. And then you are, with your mind, visualizing the described visualization of Amitabha in front. The main point is the Buddha Amitabha in front. We're made of light, intangible. And like all of these pacifying or tranquilizing, what are we going to call them? Not tranquilizing, quieting calming meditation. That's a good word. You bring your attention back gently to the visualization once it starts to wander. It's okay. And your capacity, so when you're first reciting all this, you will be kind of lost. It's normal. But then you get used to the visualization, and by doing repeated short sessions, all the details of the visualization will come to mind for you. Of course, you can look at a picture of Amitabha in the Tibetan tradition, too. And then a quiescence will occur as you place your attention back on Amitabha's beautiful red body. Okay? So then while you say Om Amitabha Hri, Om Amitabha Hri. Om Amitabha Hri. In front the transcendent conqueror melts into light and then into me. This body of mine dissolves like a sky rainbow, becoming unified emptiness and light. By this merit may I quickly attain the state of refuge, boundless light. May I and living beings, every single one, find our placement on that very ground. Find our placement on that very ground. Try to have a big horizontal awareness of all the creatures of this world and any creatures that may exist in worlds beyond. And wish that all the effort that you put into this to try to develop yourself, your wisdom and compassion, is shared equally among all of them. And slowly, you'll find yourself becoming this word bodhisattva as you ignite this intention in your own mind stream. So it's now 8 o'clock, and we just did an hour. Can you believe it? Whew, that was something. I'll see you. I haven't got a cute ending thought up, so I'll have to think of that. But I'll see you next week on Monday, and we'll take the next step. Thank you for joining me. Please comment in the comment box if you got anything out of this, or if you what topics you'd like to cover. I'd be very open to that. You take care. Bye now.